Okay, welcome to Shareability Uganda e-learning. My name is Nelson, and in today's lesson we shall be looking at understanding fractions and its operations. So this is my telephone number, and also this is my our email, that is e-learning@shareability.net. And this topic shall be looking particularly at fractions and its operations. This is also going to include a variety of things. As you can see here, as we had already included it in our curriculum breakdown, we had so far looked at some others. So in this lesson we shall be looking more at fractions itself, defining what fractions is. We shall also be looking at the various types of these fractions, defines them, then also the types of fractions, finding these equivalent fractions, and also reducing fractions. We try also to look at how do we order these fractions, how do we also compare these fractions. Then we look at how do we add, how do we subtract, and how do we work out with a variety of this. Also we shall deal with more about the word problem. Okay, so let's get started with this topic. Please be able to have a mind and get time you learn with us, for us to understand each and every trick that is always asked about this kind of topic. So let's get started. As you can see, we are having what we call fractions. I don't know whether some of you have an idea about fractions. Someone with an idea about fractions? Alright, when we talk about fractions, we just simply mean fraction is a part of the what? A part of the whole. That's like when you have been having can give an example. Let me say an example of a box. Then we can also give an example of a box. It might be any object, as you can see it. So it might be the mango, it can either be a tomato, it can either be, I know some of you takes what we call watermelon. You find when they are selling, they just give you a piece of it. So that's what we simply mean by a whole. The total sum of it, then you take just a portion of it. That's how we can really understand the so-called fractions. Okay. So as you can see here, we are trying to demonstrate and show you how you can clearly identify what these fractions are. For example, here we have our square, which is a whole. We can call it 1. Okay, we have our 1 square, but in this one shape of ours, we are dividing it more. Okay, then we also shade a part to differentiate among the parts that has been among the parts within the whole within the whole box of ours. So now when we are to identify and now see what fractions is, we take out the shaded part. So our shaded part, since we have the whole shape of ours as a whole, then we try to identify and shaded out some parts out of the 4 parts. Then here we shall be able to identify and say the shaded fraction can be 3 out of what? 3 out of 4. And then we talk about the unshaded. Of course, we have 1 out of what? Out of 4. So in really understanding these parts of fractions, we say the top number is called a numerator. We are saying any top number, we call it a what? We call it a numerator. This is the part we are talking about. For example, if we have our 3 out of 4, we are saying that the top. Okay, so we can see here. We can call this one our top, and also this one we can call it our what? Our bottom. Okay, so we are saying that the top part of this, for example, our 3 out of 4, our 3 is going to be the top, then our 4 is going to be the bottom. So we are saying that we call this one a what? We call this one a numerator. Okay, let me write here. We call it a what? A numerator. Then also this one we call it a denominator. So this one we call it a what? We call it a denominator. And then, as you can see down here, we are saying that our 3 out of 4, our 3 is going to be what? Our numerator, then our 4 is going to be the denominator. So that simply clarify that we can now be able to identify part of these fractions as what? As a whole. So we now come back to identifying these fractions because they are of different categories or types. So how do we identify and say that this kind of fraction belongs to a certain part or belongs to another part? That is by understanding there are different categories. So when we identify their different categories, then we can be able to tell and say that this is this fraction belongs to this type of fraction. Okay. So here we are saying we have our part A, and our part A we are saying these are we are having what we call the proper fractions. Of what we call proper fractions. So in these proper fractions, we need to understand them, and we see how do they work and how do they operate. Then we also have what we call the improper fractions. We should also be able to understand them. So by definition, we are saying proper fractions. We are defining them as the type of fractions whereby the numerator are smaller than the denominator. As you can see here on this diagram, we are having our 1 out of 2. We are having our 1 out of 2. So we are saying that it is a type of fraction where the numerator, this part, okay, is smaller than the denominator. So we are saying according to the way how we had named our fraction, we say the number which is on the bottom, it's the one we call the denominator. So now this simply means that when we have our numerator, which is the upper part, being smaller than the down part, which is the bottom, we call it a what? We call it a proper fraction. Then also we look at improper fractions. We are saying these are fractions with a whole, okay, with a whole number. Please, there is some number here with a whole number, and fractions and fraction part, they have the fraction what? The fraction parts. So in the simple term, these fractions, they do not have the numerator less than the what? Less than the top, but it is the numerator which is greater. It can either be greater than or be what? Or be small. So here we have our our examples, we have 3 out of what? We have our 3 out of 2. Then we have our 4 out of what? Out of 3. Then we have our 14 out of 5. Then we also have our 15 out of what? Out of 4. So when you look at this, we can see that our numerator, okay, our numerator is greater than the denominator. Also this one, our numerator is 14, but our denominator is what? Is 5. So now this clearly tells us that also improper fractions, they have the denominator which is greater, the numerator is greater than the denominator. Then we also come to what we call mixed fractions. We are saying these mixed fractions are fractions with a whole number and a fractional part. They have what we call a whole number. As you can remember, we are able to say that given our shape here, which is square, given our shape here, which is a square, we say that the whole of this, you can give it a 1, which clarifies to be a whole. Then also we now start dividing itself. Then we form what we call portions. So in these portions, the portions now become part of what? Part of the whole. Okay, so that's why we're able to represent it in this way. We say 3 out of 4 out of 4 portions. Okay, so we are saying that what we call these mixed fractions, for them they have what we call the whole, that is the whole number, then also the fraction part of it. So we can identify this as one having let me say a watermelon, assuming this is our watermelon. Okay, so our watermelon, when we divide it by some parts, we shall say our watermelon is 1, but we are dividing it into some parts. If this part is shaded, okay, we can say 1 out of, if we still have some other parts like here, we can say our shaded part is going to be equal to 1, the whole of it, then 1 part which is shaded out of how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, out of 4. So this is how our mixed fraction looks like, and that's the explanation we can give for you to understand. Then we had been given a variety of examples where we have our 3. Our 3 is the whole number, then 1 out of 3. Then we also have our 1 whole number, which is 1, then 1 out of 4. Okay, then we also have our other number, which was 4, then 1 out of 5. So we are saying that this belongs to a category called what? Called mixed fractions. So we shall also be looking at how now do we apply these ones in our number operations, and how do they ask some questions or no as such. So we have a note here. They are saying for a mixed fraction like this, our 5 is going to be the whole number. Okay, like I've explained here, our 5 is going to be the whole number. Then our 2 is going to be the numerator. Then our 3 is going to be the denominator. Okay, now we can demonstrate this as we have been saying that assuming we have our tomato here. Okay, let us draw our tomato here. Okay, this is our what? This is our tomato, and we decide to divide our tomato by 2. Okay, when we decide to divide our tomato by 2, and then we can now be able to identify it is going to be 1 tomato. Okay, 1 as whole, Then if we decide to say maybe this is the part, want to identify this part, then you can say one out of the two. So this is going to be our full tomato before it was divided. Then we also do what? We also identify now some of the parts where we say this is going to be our numerator. It's going to be our what? Our numerator. Then also this is going to be our denominator. Okay, so this clear. Now I identify and explain how we can really present what we call our fraction. So we shall be dealing more about this and learn how do we solve these numbers concerning what? Concerning fractions. And we shall also be able to now to look more on the different categories of these fractions and how can we solve them. So we shall also be looking at if you have been given the whole fraction or a whole mixed fraction, how do you change it to a proper fraction, or how do you change it to improper fraction? Alright, so for this lesson we shall be able to look at some different categories of these fractions and solve out some numbers. Okay, so for this I hope we shall be able to catch up in our next lesson. Let me say thank you very much for being part of this lesson. I shall be able to wrap up in our next lesson as we hover and understand more concept about this. Stay blessed. A nice moment.